Can you believe this? The MSM has been ablaze over the last few days over Trump's bloodbath comments, and it's quickly turning into a moment that lifts the veil over the media's editorial standards. Now, why do I say this? Well, it's not even a pro or anti-Trump issue anymore, because even center-left commentators like Tim Pool are coming at the mainstream media and shows like The View for feeding into the fear-mongering around Donald Trump. This incident ties into so many different things, but watch Tim Pool's response before we get into it.
He said, "If I don't get elected, it'll be a bloodbath." And what does that mean? Well, any sane, reasonable person understands the context of his words. If I become president, I will make sure we bring your jobs back here. We will prevent cars from being made in Mexico or outside of the United States. But if they come in, they're going to allow it. They're going to allow all these jobs to be shipped out of this country, and it will be a bloodbath. What does bloodbath mean? It's a figurative speech that literally means like, it will be a disaster, a collapse, an economic collapse. Immediately, everyone says, here we go. The media is trying to make up another hoax. Now, to be fair, when Trump said some migrants are not people, the context he was talking about was murderers. And
honestly, I thought we were over this after the debunking of the very fine people remark run by the media out of context a few years ago, but apparently not. It shouldn't be breaking news that words can have two different meanings at the same time, and the word bloodbath has long been used in the economy and financial markets to describe devastating losses or downturn. How can you take that word out of context when literally the sentences before and after the word are where Trump is talking about the US automotive industry? In fact, all you need to do is look up the textbook meaning of the word bloodbath in a dictionary to see how it's commonly used to refer to major economic disaster. And it's been in vogue for several decades, all the way from the 1970s, in stock exchange circles and people that monitor the financial markets or need to communicate the severity of a downturn. I actually dug up this Florida newspaper article from over 2 decades ago speaking about the financial bloodbath under President Bush, which goes to show how old the term is in those circles. Trump himself has most likely been using that term for a long time, being an investor since the 80s. And it's truly incredible that the mainstream media would go out of their way to mangle and cut up Donald Trump's clips to make it seem like something it wasn't. So much so that this New York Times headline exemplifies what's wrong with the modern mainstream media that's quickly losing public trust for this simple reason. It reads, quote, "Trump says some migrants are not people and predicts a bloodbath if he loses," which even the person that wrote it likely understands that it's being written with a degree of intellectual dishonesty. So just to chip through the haze and confusion being created, I want to give you the full context of what Trump actually said in the sentences before and after that word.
If you look at the United Auto Workers, what they've done to their people is horrible. They want to do this all-electric nonsense where the cars don't go far, they cost too much, and they're all made in China. Those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now. And you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. No, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories.
There's a rule of thumb that everyone should follow. If something sounds so outlandish that it doesn't seem true, then it probably isn't. Even the philosophical principle called the Occam's razor suggests that you should prefer the simplest explanation for something before you move to the more complex ideas, in short. In this case, I think the media and even the average person have to take so many logical leaps in order to construe that Trump wants a literal bloodbath that it should make you stop and think that it can't really be. A similar thing happened back in 2017 when Donald Trump called a subset of people protesting the removal of statues as very fine people, after clearly separating and condemning white supremacists in the crowd in no uncertain terms, and yet most of the general public went along with what the media portrayed, while missing the necessary context and qualifier. People that found this context later realized just how easy it was for them to be tricked, It's clear that we're seeing something similar now and that it's just as easy as it was before. Watch this clip from MSNBC's Morning Joe last week that truly gives you a flavor of just how desperate the mainstream media has become to grab controversy to retain their relevance.
He's talking about a bloodbath for America. It's laid out in the terms of it. And these idiots on Twitter, these idiots on cable news, these idiots on Sunday shows going, well, presidents, you know, he was talking only about the auto industry, and this is one more. It's just let me say that at 6:15 a.m. It's just he knew what he was doing. We're not stupid. Americans aren't stupid. He was talking about a bloodbath. Sometimes a bloodbath means a bloodbath. And when he finishes by saying, and that's just going to be the least of it, seriously, these people may be stupid. We're not.
I have to say that it sounds completely uncharacteristic of how a news channel has conventionally been perceived. Did news anchors back in the day really shout and mock people on air, or instead just deliver the news in a neutral way? This segment sounded more like a TV tabloid at best, which explains why the MSM is so quickly losing the game to alternative media platforms. But I think there's an advantage that the mainstream media still has. It's that it still penetrates households and retains viewership from select segments of the demographic, and it's also often the first to break a news and form narrative on it, making it really difficult to break one set. The fact is that any news media organization that thinks it can simply distort the picture it's presenting truly doesn't understand that it's shooting itself in the foot. Ultimately, that's not good for the media, but also perhaps not good for democracy itself. Because, here's the thing, even if the mainstream media wants to pull people away from someone like Trump, it doesn't help when they strike at their own reputation with public gaffes like this. Maybe that's exactly what has happened to a show like The View as well. Who could actually have been a worthy challenger to Trump's politics and rhetoric if they were able to retain any trust or credibility after takes like this?
So he says his bloodbath comment was referring to the auto industry. Now, I don't know if that's how y'all heard it, but that's not how it sounded to me.
We have seen January 6th. We've seen that he's led an insurrection. So no, we're not taking it out of context, because the context is his history and his life. His words matter, and we're not taking him out of context because he's been saying to us he's going to be the retribution. Well, believe him.
No wonder The View has a 2.5 rating on IMDb. You cannot get away with serving people bad political takes and expecting that they won't eventually notice and click off. The View is a microcosm of what is happening on a larger scale with the entire mainstream media, as people flock to the online world to get some semblance of sense back. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, a credible mainstream media that is regulated and vetted is an important counterbalance to the online world, but it only seems to be on a self-inflicted decline in the last few years. And above all else, that helps someone like Donald Trump, who's already built a narrative around the media for years by his flippant use of the term fake news.
You are fake news.
The last thing that a mainstream media should want to do is prove him right.